Hello, I'm Helen from Journal with Purpose and welcome to my latest YouTube video. I wanted to just start off by saying thank you so much to everybody who left such lovely, kind comments on my last video. They were so lovely to look through and hopefully I've replied to all of you, so thank you for that. Today I'm going to do a quick junk journaling session. I've kind of started in this journal. One of the pages I used was an old embroidery pattern. So I'm not doing the cross stitch that I think this pattern would be for. I've just done some kind of back stitch along here, but I'm going to do a little bit more. And I've been using kind of washi tape on the back to hold the threads down. Once I've finished adding my stitching to that, I'll probably add a backing on there and also decorate the inside of the covers. So I had a quick flick through and I think I'm going to work on these pages today. And because it's been a little while since I've done some junk journal pages, I decided to look back through my layout ideas book, and towards the back of this book, page 104 onwards, there's some junk journal ideas. So I was just looking at some of the layering, use of doilies, pressed flowers, all those sorts of things. Even though this is my book, it's from a few years ago, and I find it so helpful just to look back through some of my old pages. I do the same in my old junk journals, creative journals, and just look at what appeals to me now. And one of the things I decided I really wanted to do was to use some tags again. So I'm going to decorate a tag in this session. But this gives some ideas for stamping, layering, altering magazine images, and also some writing prompts. And I actually found my lace this morning that I used when I created these, again with some tags in it. So if you've got this book, it's just a reminder that there are some junk journal pages in there, say with writing prompts and things like that. Now I've got some really cheap cardboard luggage tags. These aren't your kind of proper mixed media ones, but I've used them a couple of times now and I found that they've worked quite well with different mediums, even quite wet ones. So the first thing I'm going to do is use some plastic packaging, and I've got some distress ink in Vintage Photo here, and I'm just going to kind of squidge that onto the wrapper and then give it a little spritz with some water, and I'm then going to turn that over and tap that onto my tag. Just going to put that down. And I just want to get a nice kind of vintagey looking background on here. You could do the same with watercolours, or even things like Tombow ABT brush pens give a really lovely effect when spritzed with water onto plastic packaging. So I'm quite pleased with that. I don't want to overwork it, because if you press it down too flat, you'll get a whole flat kind of spread of colour. And I want that nice little dappled effect. So I'm just going to get that dried off. I really like how that's looking now it's dry. You've got these kind of little ink blobs and then speckles as well. So I want to add a little bit more interest. So I'm still working on the background here. So I've got an old Paper Artsy text stamp. So I'm going to use that same Vintage Photo ink. I'm just going to pop a bit over both the right and left hand side, and then maybe just keep dabbing it just so you've got these little bits of text coming through. And next I'm going to do a little bit of embossing, and I'm going to use my white embossing powder for this. So I've got my embossing stamp pad. I'm going to open up my messy piece of paper here. And again, I've got an old paper artsy stamp here. I bought loads of these when I first started journaling and I still use them all the time. I love the fact I think probably they're on rubber, so you can kind of play around and manipulate them a little bit. So I'm going to use my embossing pad on here in exactly the same way you would with a regular ink pad. It's just it is a bit stickier, which is what you want. And I'm not worried about a perfect image here. I just want some interest in the background. So I'm just going to press that down firmly to transfer the embossing ink. And now while that's still wet, I'm going to tip over lots of this white embossing powder. And now I'll remove any excess. And so you can see it's really subtle there at the moment, but it's picked up that stamped image. And what I'm now going to do is use my heat tool just to set that powder. And I've got quite a few different coloured embossing powders. I've got white, I like using the clear ones as well, and I've got some kind of metallic golds and bronzes. But so I'll just get that white dried and show you what it looks like. So now the powder's set, you can see it stands out much more clearly. Again, it's still subtle. I kind of want this on the background just to be peeping through. The next thing I'm going to use is my distress ink again. And this time I'm going to use an ink blending tool. And I just want to rub that around the edges of this tag, just give a slightly more kind of vintagey, distressed look. Next, I'm going to look for an image to put on the top. This is really beautiful pet tape from London Gifties. Definitely got that autumn feel to it, which is just beautiful. I think I might go, we're not in autumn yet, but I'm so excited to use these during the autumn. So maybe, I think this one's absolutely stunning actually. I think maybe having her at the bottom should work really well. Have her just slightly coming over the side there. And just snip off that side image, the little bit that's come over the edge. And now I'm going to just maybe add a little bit of washi tape and then finish it off with a quote. And I really love this because you can just see the white embossing behind, little bits of the text still showing through. So I don't want to add too much else because I think it's just looking really nice the way it is. That washi tape's quite transparent, so I use that one a lot because you get those tiny little hints of colour, but you can still see the background coming through. And I maybe add a little bit of this one as well because I like the fact that it's going to be brown, so tie in with the colours of the background, but it's also got a little bit of text on it. So I think I'm going to just pop that one up there, and again just snip off the excess. So I'm going to finish this off with a quote from my Tim Holtz Ideology Small Talk sticker book, and I've gone for Be Your Beautiful Self. And I'm just going to decide where I want that. I think along the bottom there. It's really nice and simple, doesn't take very long to do. I just love the way the colours of those flowers are standing out against that background. So now I'm going to decide how I want to use it. Sometimes I've used things like glassine bags, or I've made some little pockets and things to sit it in. But I actually want this one to kind of stand out all by itself and not be tucked in anything. So I'll probably use a little bit of washi tape to create it as a kind of tip in on my page. And I don't want to add too much to these today and overcomplicate it. I really love some of the interest on these backgrounds. I think that's one of the fun things with junk journaling is you don't tend to have to do loads for it to still add lots of visual interest. So I think I'm going to first of all add perhaps this strip of washi tape here to create this tip in on the side of my page. I've gone for quite neutral colours with this, because I kind of want the tag to be the main thing. So I'm just popping that there, and then I'm going to fold it over and add a little bit more on this side here. And then I've got my date stamp. My black stays on ink, so I'm just going to add that to the top over here. And I think what I'm going to write about, I love that quote, be your beautiful self, and it's definitely one of the benefits I've found of getting older, is that actually I'm probably far more accepting of myself now than I was 10 or even 5 years ago. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes jotting down some thoughts on that. And I'm going to use a black Moody gel pen.
Gather wood, light the fire, hypnotized by blue and amber flame. Pour the wine, raise a glass, toast a memory, call to mind again. Thank you for the company. Thank you for the word you...
So on there I've written, one of the benefits I've found of getting older is that I'm becoming better at accepting myself exactly as I am. That doesn't mean that I've stopped trying to grow or improve myself, just that I'm doing it on my own terms now. Less comparison, more joy. I now want to add a little bit of interest to this background behind the tag and some to this little page here to help tie them in together. So I've gone back to my paper scraps, and I think I'm really simply just going to glue down some strips, and I might then add a little bit of stenciling over the top. Just thought it'd be nice to have these kind of subtle layers showing through underneath. And so I've got this from the botanical book that I showed in my last video. If you can hear some little grunts and groans, that's my little dog Barney sleeping underneath at my desk. And so I'm going to use some of these same papers on the other page, but just going in a different direction. I like to try and tie things in a little bit wherever I can. Again, going to use some of that same paper, the music sheet. And then maybe one more. I've got a little bit of book text here. Let's perhaps pop that over there. And the glue that I'm using is Pritt Stick. And I'm thinking one of the things that I would like to do is add another little image up here as well. Just decide I want to add a little bit more book text along this right hand page, just so there's a little bit more visible around the side of the tag. And then go back to this beautiful pet tape. I'm so drawn to this image here. I just want to decide whether I want it down here. I think I do actually. I think that would look really nice, just kind of nestled on top of those papers. And I've got a stencil here. I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the background. Again, I'm sticking to the same ink pad today, just to try and make everything kind of quite cohesive. And I'm not worried about picking up the words here, just some of the letters. Again, just a little bit of extra interest, and then I think I'm going to just distress around the edge of this page as well. I'm really looking forward to finishing off that front page with the embroidery. It's taken me far too long. I don't know why. I really want to get back into my stitching again. I've just signed up to something called the Sashiko Stitching Challenge by Zen Stitching that starts in mid-August. I'm hoping that'll be a nice little 5-day challenge to get me back into doing kind of more stitching and more with my fabrics. I've got lots of scraps and mixtures of vintage and modern fabrics that I'm really keen to start using again. I think the final thing I might do is just in this black kind of text of the book, I'm going to use a white gel pen and perhaps just doodle in a few little flowers or something. I would like to make some kind of change to the background or something. Sometimes I'll just add a little bit of writing. But when you've got kind of big black spots, to me it always feels inviting to get out the white gel pen and add something to it. So I'm just doing really simple little 5 rounded petals per flower. And it kind of disrupts the background, if you like. So at the moment, it's the black background, which with, I think it's like a boy running. And that has nothing to do with my pages, so I'm just disrupting it a little bit so that the eye can't necessarily quite work out what's going on. And I'm using a white Uniball Signo gel pen for this. And one final one down there. Okay, well that is my journal pages now all complete. I really hope you've enjoyed this journaling session, and it is, as always, I hope it gives you some ideas for your own journals too. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's joined me over on Patreon. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing really well, and I look forward to speaking with you really soon in my next video.
Gather wood, light the fire, hypnotized by blue and amber flame. Pour the wine, raise a glass, toast to memory, call to